Hi, so what I'm going to do today is just show you how you can use Replit to load data from a file. We're going to look at a CSV file. So I'm going to talk you through what I'm going to do. So if you just follow this, and if you have Replit open at the same time, that would be useful, or you could just do it after. So on the left-hand side, under settings, I've switched mine to side by side so I can view all the data that on the right-hand side as we create it. Also on this window, if you click the Files button, then you can see another panel. And at the top here, if you click Add File and give it a name, now we're just going to call it data.csv. Now CSV stands for comma separated values, which is what you'll get out of a spreadsheet. So something like Excel or Google Sheets will be able to open up this kind of data, and the comma dictates that anything separated by it will go into a separate cell. Now I'm going to open that by clicking on it, and it's blank at the moment, and I've got something saved on my clipboard, and that's a load of data about the Simpsons. So it's name, it's age, and it's their employment status, or the job that they do. So they're in there. So I've got my data. Now clicking back to main.py, so that's a Python program. I'm going to try and write the Python program to open it up and store it in a way that I can manipulate it and use it later. So the first thing I need to do is get a file name in there. Now I'm going to use capital letters and write the word file handle. Now that makes it a constant. So constant is something that doesn't change. It's never going to change in this script. So we're going to just use the word file handle to refer to our data.csv file. So we've assigned it the value of the string data.csv, and that's going to be our file name. Now, so in Python, we can open that up, and we can open up files. And this is a standard way to do it. So we can do, we give it a name. So often we just call it F file equals open. It's a built-in function called open, and we type in open, and then we put in the file name, and we just need to type in file handle there. And then we do the mode that we're going to read it in. So whether we're going to read it in a read mode, a write mode, excuse me, read mode, a write mode, or a read-write mode, and then we're just going to read that. So we're going to type in an R there and do that. There's a little R. Okay, now, so we've opened it. Then what we can do is tell it to Python to read it. So it's opened it, and now we can read it. So we can use the .read method on the file object that we've created. So we've created the file object, we've opened it, now we can read it. And then once we read it, let's assign whatever we read it to a value. So let's just say data equals f.read. So it's going to read it, and it's going to store the data in a variable called data. Now we can print data and see what that looks like. Okay, so it's come out on the other side over here. So that looks okay. Let's just try and find out what kind of data type that is, whether it's a string, whether it's a list, how it's brought it in. So there's a Python function called type, and we're going to print type of data, and that should tell us what data type is data. And it's a string, so it's a long string, but I don't want it as a string, I want it into a list. So that's not really working for me. So we can try other things to get it into a list. So what I'm going to do now, so I've got my data, I'm going to read it. Let's do this, let's do .split. And that's a Python method, and it should split it at the commas, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we've got it into a list now. It's a class of a list, but it's one long list, but I wanted it in a 2D array. So I want a list. I want a list for Barry, I want a list for Bart, I want a list for Eleanor going down. And this one, it's also split it in the wrong places. So that doesn't look right. So now we'll try this. Let's put a comma. Let's split it by a comma and see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks a bit better. And we're getting the whole name here, and we're getting this one, but we're also getting this \n. Now, if you remember, \n means new line. So that's why when we did it before, it looked nice on the screen on the right-hand side, all down in its lines, but that's because it wasn't showing us the \n, which is there. So it still doesn't look right. So we've got other things we can do. We can .strip. We can try that one. and see what that looks like. And we're back to here again, but it's just a string. It's taken out the backslash ends, but doesn't seem to do much. So not having much joy here. So with CSV, it doesn't seem to really work the best way for us. So what we're going to try and do now is to create use a different method by importing a module that's already written for us, and it's called import CSV. So CSV is the module. I'm going to try this instead, see if this does a better version for us. So import CSV, we have our file handle, and let's write all this differently now. So another way to open a file is called using the method with. So we're going to do with open rather than just open, and with is quite nice. It will also close the file at the end for you. So when you do open a file, you should always close it. So we should have written down here f.close just to close it off, in case someone else wants to use it, but we didn't, but never mind. So with open, and then what we're going to do here is put in our file name, file handle, and this time what we need to do here is a new line equals, it's not speech mark. Okay, and we're going to open that as F. So we're calling it F. So F is going to be our file object as we did before. And in the CSV, we have something called a reader. So that's going to read the CSV file for us. So .reader, and that's a method from the CSV module that we've imported. And we're going to ask it to read F. Whatever it creates, it's going to store it in a variable called F. So once it's read it. And then what we want to do is convert all that into a list. So we're going to say, let's call it data. Data, it's going to be our list name. Data equals, and this is a built-in Python function called list, and we're going to get a list of the data from reader. And then once all that's done, that will automatically close the file for us, and then we're going to just print data and see what that looks like. So we don't need this anymore, but we could leave in the line file's already closed because we used with. We leave this one so we can see what type of data is and run that. Okay, so that's much better for us now. So we have everything as an individual list. So here's our data, and then we can do stuff with that. And I'll show you what we can do with that in the next clip. Okay.